So d4. So if you're big Shang Lei Lu, what are you going to play? Well, you're not going to play d5. You're not going to play knight f6. You're going to play f5. You're going to play Dutch defense because you're big Shang Lei Lu. So this is obviously a combative opening. Knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5. So this is not like a super standard treatment of the Dutch, but it's a way to play it. Knight e4. So usually the Dutch, black wants to push this e-pawn at some point, but white's kind of making it difficult. So he plays bishop h4, keeps the pawn pinned. g6, knight d2, g7, e3, c5, just trying to pile up on this pawn. c3, just calmly defending it. d5, de4. Okay, which way do you take, guys? This one's kind of simple, but which way do you take? Well, obviously you take with the f-pawn. You open the file. If you take this way, you're just opening up this diagonal, which is not helpful. Does everyone see why it's better to take with the f-pawn? Get the half open f-file, make the bishop better. And you don't open this diagonal. Okay, so knight d2, take on d4, take on d4, castle, and queen b3. Okay, so I mean, it's kind of normal. It's kind of normal so far. So the first question is, in this position, is white threatening something? Is white threatening something? And if so, what is white threatening? Yeah. So queen b3 does come with a threat. And the threat is that since it's pinning this pawn, knight takes e4 is possible. Okay, so if you were black, how would you defend this against this threat? There's actually quite a few reasonable solutions. Depending on who you ask. But what's one way? King h8. Right. So king h8 is kind of like the worst way to do it. Because you're kind of wasting a move. So yeah, king h8 is like the Potter's way to defend against this. Because you're basically just saying, okay, I see a threat, I'm going to respond to it. So that's really like the low-rated person's way to defend it against it. Yeah, so king h8 is just bad. King h8 is just bad. It doesn't lose, but it's just a waste of a move, which is important because you don't want to waste a move. So this is where tactics come in, because actually, believe it or not, none of the three ways that black has of adequately defending against this threat actually directly defend against the threat. So I'm going to show you the three ways that black has to defend against it, and actually none of the three ways actually stop knight takes e4 directly. So moves like e6, which like hang the queen, bishop e6, which hang b7, are all terrible. So the three moves to actually do it is knight c6. So this is way one, a5, which is way 2, and bishop f6, which is way 3. So your goal is to tell me, why does knight c6, a5, and bishop f6, why do all three of these stop knight takes e4? Even though, again, none of them are directly stopping it, how do they all actually stop it? And none of these really create a larger threat. I mean, bishop f6 does, I guess, but a5 or knight c6, neither of them do. So this is really like the key of playing high-level chess, is to understand that, you know, meeting this threat with some sort of move like king h8 is really not what the position's about. So yeah, okay, let's go one by one. So knight c6, so if knight takes e4, knight a5, game over, right? Because the queen has to move off the diagonal, and so the queen has to move someplace. No matter where the queen moves, you're just going to take and win a piece, all right? But it's not so simple, right? It's not so simple because, you know, the queen can go to b4 or a3, and then after take, you could take on e7. So it's not so simple, but I mean, this position should be very good for black after take and take. I mean, this should be really good for black. 2 pieces for the queen and, or sorry, 2 pieces for the rook, and white's development is kind of lackluster. But actually, there's something even stronger, I guess. Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. I mean, this is one variation. I mean, this is actually good for black, but maybe even queen d5 is even stronger, and then take something like this. This is probably good for black. Okay, and then of course, if you guys figured that out, you guys probably also figured out that a5 has the same idea. So if knight takes e4, then a4. Okay, this one's kind of simpler, but similar idea. So if knight takes e4 here, a4, queen a3, d4, and then bishop c4 check, king h8, check. Bishop e7, and again, this should still be good for black. Queen a5 check.
Check.
Bishop e4, queen f5, threatening this. So bishop takes f8, bishop takes f8, queen c3, and bishop d6, something like this. And again, this is very powerful for black because these 2 bishops are super strong. And again, white's kind of behind development, and black's pieces are kind of pouring out. Like knight c6 is coming, bishop b4 is coming. Castling feels very unsafe. You know, the king feels unsafe. Thanks, buddy. I'm glad you approve. Okay. But again, like, these variations aren't, like, super simple, you know? Because, again, like, after knight c6, you know, knight takes e4, you know, it's not trivial that after knight a5, queen a3, like, that this is necessarily good for black. Because you're not just, like, winning a piece immediately. You know, white does get 2 pieces for rook, but, you know, if you look a little bit further, you realize that this is strong. Okay, and then the third one, which is a little bit more crafty, is bishop f6. So this one does have the point of creating a stronger threat. So of course the bishop has to do something. So the most naive thing, of course, would be to take, and then black would take. Okay, so the question is, which way do you take? So which way would you take this bishop to stop knight takes e4? Yeah, so actually it's a little counterintuitive, but you actually want to take with the rook. Because if you take with a pawn, then actually you can play knight takes e4. And this is just fine for white. Because black doesn't really have anything that can compensate for the fact that he just lost a pawn. Something that's actually cute, by the way, is after rook e8. There's something cute here. Do you guys see what's cute here? white can just win by force instantly with the cute queen takes d5.
Check.
Queen takes d5. Knight takes f6.
Check.
And we got a little fork. So white just wins 2 pawns here for nothing. And I mean, what else could black do? I mean, if bishop e6, just knight c5 or something, and white's completely winning. So yeah, you want to take with the rook, but it seems kind of not what you want to do, because after knight takes e4, it seems like, okay, well, not only am I taking this pawn, but I'm taking it with a threat. But actually, the idea is that this rook, again, is going to try to drive this queen off of b3. Because as long as you can make this queen leave b3, you'll be able to take on e4. So rook b6, idea to drive the queen off. Now bishop b5 forced. And now this is tricky. This is still tricky. Because how do you actually win material here? It's very counterintuitive. And again, this requires some calculation. Okay, well, the first move is obviously you want to play a6. So you're just attacking the pin piece. But okay, knight c3. And now what? Because you have to be careful. You have to be careful because now I have a threat too. I have a threat to take on d5. So if you kind of blindly take on b5 with the pawn, I can take on d5.
Check.
Obviously with the queen first. And now I'm threatening this, and I'm threatening this. So all of a sudden I'm getting a lot of stuff. You know, if you play rook e6 to defend this pawn, I play knight c7 and fork your rooks. And if you play rook c6, I play knight takes e7 and fork your rook and king. So you have to play rook d6, and then now all of a sudden, okay, even if you do win my knight because it's trapped, I have 3 pawns for the piece, and you know, my pawns are super solid, I have a good formation here, and your pawns are actually kind of weak. So white's probably not much worse here. White's probably a little worse, but not much worse. So you have to be careful. So this doesn't quite work. Yeah, you couldn't really play knight takes d5 first because bishop e6 is strong. And now the knight's pinned, and knight takes e7 doesn't work because the rook defends the bishop. And knight f6 doesn't work for the same reason. So what instead, though? So after knight c3. Because the idea is to play queen takes d5 after ab5. So how do you actually keep it strong? And again, if bishop d7, then I can play queen takes d5 check.
Check.
And this is probably good for white. Actually, on bishop d7, I can actually play this. Bishop takes d7. That's actually even stronger. And then the idea is after rook takes b3, I'll play bishop e6 check, remove my bishop from take, king has to move, and then I'll take on b3. And this is actually better for white, because I have what? I have a pawn, a bishop, and a rook for the queen, which is even material, but I'm going to win this pawn. So after you play knight d7 or something, I'm going to play bishop takes d5. And this is actually probably better for white. Because again, white's pawns are so solid, this pawn is weak, this pawn isn't looking too good. And material is actually in white's favor. So yeah, actually this is the way to go after bishop d7. So there's all these tricks on d5. So the right way to do it is actually to play the kind of paradoxical knight to d7. Knight to d7. Point being that after so after queen takes d5, you can actually just play e6 now. The rook is defending the pawn. So really, you can't extricate this bishop anymore. I mean, this bishop is just lost. So what you could try, the only thing you could really try is like queen a3 or something. But there's actually a trick at the end, which is queen a3. So the idea is that you're pinning this pawn, but what ends up happening is actually the queen ends up getting trapped. So after take, rook a6, the queen is trapped. So that doesn't work. So the bishop is basically lost. But knight d7 is actually the only way to do it. And it looks weird because you're undefending your d5 pawn. But the idea is that you're removing the knight from the back row and defending the rook on b6. Anyway, this is kind of a far afield. But I just want to give you guys a flavor of how you kind of meet threats at a higher level. You don't kind of respond to them blindly. You look for ways to improve your position while meeting the threat. Because, I mean, ideally, you know, if this move wasn't here, if this move knight takes c4 didn't exist, you'd want to play a move like knight c6, right? You'd want to develop. You wouldn't want to play a move like king h8. So being able to realize that you still can play knight c6 because knight takes c4 doesn't work is kind of what separates thinking at a higher level from kind of just thinking on a cursory level. So knight c6 was played. So far so good, everything's fine. So white didn't take on e4, he didn't want to do that 2 pieces for rook thing. He just calmly plays rook c1. Okay. So, notice how white is still neglecting to develop this bishop. He's kind of just developing his queenside completely first before doing this because, you know, he's not really entirely sure he even wants to castle maybe. But he has this f-pawn guarded, so he doesn't have to worry too much about a direct attack. But, I mean, his king is in the center. So black... So black kind of took this as a sign that he should go absolutely crazy. Because he thought, I'm big Shanglai Lu. Why shouldn't I be able to mate black or mate white in the center of the board? Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to give up the e4 pawn, which is why he played knight c6. But, okay, now black decides to go a little bit crazy. So black plays the move bishop e6. Which, you know, doesn't look so crazy at first glance, but... But what does it seem like black's allowing white to do here after bishop e6? Knight takes e4. Well, again, knight takes e4, knight a5. Same trick. But yeah, it seems like he's undefending this pawn, right? So if you're Daniel Dubov and you've got big Shanglai Lu staring at you, playing bishop e6, you've got to think that there might be some reason that you can't take this pawn. I mean, it looks nice at first glance. It looks nice at first glance. Because, you know, you're threatening to take the knight, but you're also threatening to take e7. So, you know, if this knight moves, you know, for example, knight a5, you can just take e7 and be up 2 clean pawns, it seems. It seems. So the question is, do you take this pawn as white? Because, you know, it seems like black is giving you a gift. I mean, you know, he didn't need to undefend that pawn. There was nothing pressing that required him to undefend the pawn. So, you know, he voluntarily chose to undefend the pawn. So the question is that pawn something you'd want to take? How long did this spend? You don't get that information, buddy. But if you really want to know, 9 minutes. 9 minutes. So it's not like he played instantly and blundered a pawn. Like, he thought about what he was going to do. So yeah, notice after queen takes pawn, you're threatening the knight. So rook b8 isn't possible. Like, rook b8 is kind of like the standard reply in these types of positions, with the idea that you're going to take on b2. But the problem is this knight's hanging on c6. You know, usually there's not a knight hanging there. And after queen takes b7, like I said, knight a5, which is another usual response, the queen can actually go to e7 and kind of extricate itself. So the question is, what should happen here? What should happen here? So what do you guys think? Should white take? Should white take? Yeah, I mean, I already showed you that this queen is never getting trapped. I mean, even at the very least, you could just play queen c7 here. At the very least. And this must be completely good for... Oh, actually, rook c8 is a trick. Okay, so this is actually a trick. Yeah, rook c8 actually does win. Because queen takes d8, you have rook takes c1, check. So that's a trick. That's a trick. So you can't play queen c7, sorry. But I'm pretty sure you can take on e7. And then after queen b6, you can just play like b4. This must be completely winning for white. This must be completely fair. I mean, you just have 2 pawns with no compensation. I mean, queen's coming to c5 next. This seems just winning. Okay, but yeah, queen c7 was a little trick. But okay. So yeah, the question is, do you want to take on b7, yes or no? And yeah, what's black going to try to do in response? Because it doesn't make sense for him to play, like, you know, queen takes b7 and then, like, him to play, like... I mean, the thing is, you're attacking this knight twice even, so he can't even defend it with, like, bishop d7, because you could just take it. So yeah, the only thing you have to really consider here is queen takes b7, knight takes d4, which is what happened in the game. So okay. So now what? Now what? Yeah, I mean, being greedy is nice, but now what? Because, okay, so at the moment, material is completely even, right? White took a pawn on b7, black took a pawn on d4. Of course, black's knight is hanging, but, I mean, at the moment, material's even. And, you know, the pawn that black took is more important than the pawn that white took. So, really, the only way to justify taking on b7 would be to take on d4. Like, there's no real wimping out now. You can't really just make another move. Right. So the only other thing you could try, other than playing that, is take on e7. But the problem is, after take on e7, rook f7, take on d8, take on b7. Okay, this is hanging. So if you take this, I'm going to take this. And if bishop g5, knight f5. And this pawn is super weak. b3, rook c8. And this bishop is super powerful. Rook c8, bishop c8. And the fact that this rook is not in the game yet means black has probably equalized. So white is up a pawn here. 6 against 5. It's a lot of extraneous arrows and circles, but yeah, 6 against 5. But since this rook is so passive, this endgame should be fine for black. And there's really nothing else that you could do after rook f7, because, I mean, you're going to lose a piece here. So, I mean, you might as well take the queen and play bishop g5. Because, I mean, taking here is just even worse. Because now this pawn is super weak. And you still have the same issues with your rook. So yeah, taking on e7 doesn't really gain you anything. So the real thing is basically taking on d4. Which you kind of have to do, because I mean, what else are you going to do? So take on d4. Kind of forced, I mean. Okay. So now black plays rook b8. Okay. So now what? So now try to defend. Because, okay, I mean, obviously, rook takes b2 is coming, bishop takes d4 is coming. These are the ideas in that position. So what should white play here? What should white play here? Okay, so I mean, there are a couple of ways to be extra greedy here. You can take on a7 and take on e7. Both are actually fine, but both are actually slightly inaccurate. Because, I mean, at this point, you're already enough material up that you don't need to take anything else. Right? And after queen takes a7, rook takes b2, bishop takes e7, and bishop h6. Bishop h6, believe it or not. It's a little weird. It's a little weird, right? Because if you take on d8, I can take on d2. You have to go king d1, bishop g4 check.
Check.
If you go bishop e2, I can take check.
Check.
And I can take check.
Check.
And all of a sudden you're down a lot of pieces for the queen. And if you go f3, I can take and threaten take check, and it looks nasty. It looks nasty. I mean, I don't have to even be so crazy. I can even just do something like queen a8. And after take, I'm threatening to play rook a8 too. So you have to play a3, defend. But then bishop h6, bishop e4, defending. And, you know, it's hard for you to untangle here. I might be playing e3 soon. Might be playing bishop d7, a4. And you can't really ever castle. You can't move your knight because it's pinned. You can't really move your rook because you don't want to give me the c-file. So you're kind of in a bind here, even though you're up a piece. So black has actually some decent compensation here, even though white's better. So you actually don't want to be super greedy. You don't want to be super greedy. Yeah. So actually the most principled reply is to play this move, queen to a6. So the reasoning is you give your queen the most scope, first of all, because now you're giving your queen this whole diagonal, as well as you're giving your queen this. So you're actually threatening something. So you're buying yourself a move. So, you know, black gained a tempo, and now you're gaining a tempo. So this move actually does a lot more than queen takes a7, because queen takes a7 doesn't really threaten anything super strong, whereas queen a6 does threaten something. But you also allow yourself to retreat back this way. I mean, queen takes a7 allowed the same thing, but now you're actually threatening something. So black continues with rook b6, you know, again, trying to meet this threat with a threat. Okay, but now where do you put this queen? So now what? So now you want to use the geometry of the board. Yeah, very good. Queen a3. So this is a beautiful move. This is a beautiful move because you're hitting e7, which might be important. You're defending b2, which is important because this rook, you don't want to allow this rook to come to b2. But you're also defending this third rank, which actually might be useful later because at some point black may want to play this move e3. And so defending this third rank is nice because you have this whole third rank to operate. Not to mention your queen still has the ability to take on a7 at some point if it wants to. So your queen really has maximal scope from a3. So okay. But of course we're giving up this pawn on d4. So bishop takes d4, which is what happened. Okay, so now what's the threat? What's the threat? So this bishop is now coming into our position. Okay, he's not threatening this because our bishop's on it. So there's no f2 issues. But there is an issue on another square. There's an issue on b2, right? So how do we defend against bishop takes b2, which would fork our queen and our rook? So the big threat is bishop takes b2 here. And the current material is that black has a pawn for the piece. We have an extra knight, and black has 6 pawns, we have 5 pawns. So yeah, what's the right way to defend against it? Yeah, very good. Very good. Knight to b3. Knight to b3. So now we're moving this knight to a more active square. We're blockading this file. And we're also threatening this bishop. So we're kind of combining defense and attack. So we force this bishop to move off of this, we force the bishop to move off of this strong outpost. And it has to either, go back this way or something. There's really no way for him to defend it. So knight b3, very good. So, probably black has to do something bishop f6. But then we can just take, black takes back with something, the rook maybe. And now maybe just knight d4, just blockade everything. We're just up a clean piece. We're getting ready to play bishop e2 and castle. And everything should be fine. But, black was having none of that. And black said, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Rook takes b3. Okay, so now, at the moment, material is even again. Well, we're down a pawn. But of course, the rook is hanging. So, the question is, what to take the rook with? What to take the rook with? The queen or the pawn? Really, those are the only two options. And they're both actually, good. So there's no really wrong answer. But there's one that's actually better than the other. Yeah, so the merit of taking with the pawn, is that, well, there's two merits. One is that your queen stays on this square, but two is that your queen stays on this square, on a5. So, if you do play queen takes, then queen a5 check is annoying. The problem with taking with the pawn, though, and why you'd want to take with the queen, other than, what I mentioned before, is that by taking with the pawn, you remove the queen's defense of the third rank. So a move like e3 looks quite annoying, right? Because now black's kind of just ripping open the position. So, assuming you take with the pawn, how would you meet e3? Because this does look dangerous. Yeah, very, very good. Very, very good. The very cold-blooded f3. It looks super weird to let this pawn stay here, but the bishop covers this diagonal well, and the queen is covering these squares well. The pawn's covering this square well with the rook. And yeah, you're just getting ready to play bishop e2 and castle, and you just up a rook. And black really doesn't have much here. So yeah, the cold-blooded f3 is the correct refutation. Very good. So a takes b3 is indeed the correct response. It is the preferred choice because, again, it's more important to stay on this square and on this square than it is to stay on this rank. But white wanted to be a little, careful, so he took with the queen and allowed queen a5 check. Okay, so now what? Well, you only have a couple of legal moves. And again, white is still winning, but he has to be a little bit careful now. So what should white play? What should white play here? Yeah, you can't play rook c3 and give material back. But, okay, after rook c3, I'm going to play rook c8, obviously. Bishop e7, bishop c3, bc3, rook c3. Bishop e4, rook b3, bishop a5. rook b2, bishop c3, rook a2. And this is not, you know, super clear. I mean, black now has 2 pawns for a bishop, and, you know, your king is a little weird, your bishop's a little weird. I mean, these pawns are remotely dangerous. This is probably good for white, but not the strongest continuation. Because again, I mean, black has some chances of survival in that ending, perhaps. So, I mean, that was all kind of forced, by the way. You know, white only has 3 pawns on the board left. And it's going to be hard to promote one of those pawns. Yeah, so king d1, the cool king d1. Correct. Because remember, I mean, we're up a full rook here. So all I have to do is just kind of survive this onslaught, and we're going to win. And black's running out of pieces. Okay, so black plays a very good move, bishop d7. Okay, so bishop d7 carries a dire threat. What is black's dire threat after bishop d7? Yeah, so this king d1 put our king and queen on the same diagonal. And so bishop d7 is aiming for bishop to a4, pinning the queen to the king. So how do we meet this bishop d7 move? How do we meet bishop d7? Yeah, if black were to play bishop to g4, yes, then we would indeed play bishop e2. Correct. Correct. Because after bishop takes, king takes, now we're even defending f2, which is useful. So we're defending f2 twice. With the king and with the bishop. Okay. But yeah, after bishop d7, how do we meet this threat? We have to be precise here. We have to be precise here, because actually only one move here wins. Every other move either draws or loses. So we have to be super careful. I mean, real careful. Yeah, queen takes d5, not best. Not best. Queen takes d5. Okay, so his idea, of course, is after queen takes d5, bishop c4, winning the queen back. Bishop g4 check. Bishop e2. Or sorry, e6. So you have to take. But now I have these central pawns, and I have a bishop for the rook. And this pawn's weak, and this rook is kind of bad. So you play something like rook c7, bishop e5, f3, ef3, gf3, bishop e6, just to get the rook off of the thing, rook c1, bishop e3, rook c7, bishop e6, probably just a draw. Because if you try to win, you actually might be worse. Because your king kind of sucks, my bishops are really strong, your bishop's out of play, your rook is bad. So yeah, giving back a full piece is probably not what you want to do here. You do get the queens off the board, but it's more likely than not just a draw. So yeah, I mean, you're obviously not going to move the king again, right? You're not going to move the king again, because king c2 doesn't stop anything, bishop a4 still works. If king e2, I mean, bishop g4 is very strong. I think it just wins instantly. So you're going to have to move the queen someplace. The question is, where do you move the queen? So you have quite a few choices. You can go to a3, you can go to g3, you can go to c2, you can go to b7. But only one of them actually works. Only one of them actually works. So which square to put the queen on? So let me just show you why a couple of these don't work. Queen c2 doesn't work because I can play rook c8. Play rook c8. And then after queen b3, I can go bishop a4. Then rook takes c8. King f7.
Check.
Queen c2. Bishop c2.
Check.
Rook c2. Queen a2. And this is probably equal now. I mean, you still have a material superiority. You have a rook, 2 rooks and a bishop for the queen, but your rooks are so uncoordinated, and my queen is so strong that this is probably just equal. So queen c2 doesn't work because of rook c8. So yeah, I think you guys have kind of figured out what the correct move is. The correct move is queen a3. Correct move is queen a3. So the idea is if bishop a4, you are going to play b3. And if bishop takes b3, you can play queen takes b3 and remove the queen from capture. So this works. So what black has to try here, black can take on a3, I guess. Oh, sorry. Take. And play like I don't know, like rook b8, bishop b7, rook b2 or something. But I mean, white's just up a rook here. So as long as you can trade pieces, it should be fine. Bishop b4, a5, bishop c3, something like this. So if black wants to keep the attack going, then after queen a3, he should probably play bishop g4 check.
Check.
But then just bishop e2, take, check.
Check.
And now king d1. You don't want to play king d2 and allow bishop takes f2, bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, check. So you want to make sure that's not check. And now, so on bishop f2, you can just play. You could even take on e7 actually, but you could also take on f2. You're not getting mated because you have this rook c5, believe it or not, and queen e2 check. You can calmly step over, and you're defending all the key squares. So again, white's just up a rook here. White's just up a rook here. It's just a matter of technique. But yeah, queen a3 is correct. But being faced with such a difficult defensive task, white did not come up with queen a3 and instead played queen b7. So now, dear viewers, you got your one chance. Get your one shot, your one opportunity to be Shanglei Liu, Grandmaster from China, defeater of Magnus Carlsen. How do you save this position? Black to move and draw. So there's a reason queen b7 was not the best move. So black to move and draw, guys. I'll give you guys a minute or two to figure this out. Black to move and draw. So you guys a minute, and King Rat is right. Shield charge, E3. Yeah, so you're just gonna use battering ram to threaten mate. So yeah, so threat is Queen D2 mate, and it's actually really hard to stop. There's actually only two good ways to stop it. There's actually only two good ways to stop it. Okay, so I'm going to show you first a way that doesn't work, that seems like it should work, and then I'll show you the two ways to stop it. So one way is, the way that doesn't work is FE3. Look, it seems natural, right? Okay, stop and get rid of the intruder. Problem with FE3 is that there's this nice line. Bishop E3, okay, so you're still threatening mate. Rook C2. Bishop F5, so you're threatening to take on C2 and then like play Queen D2 and stuff. So Rook C3. Queen A4 check.
Check.
So crisscross, all sorts of crisscrosses. So Queen B3. Now Queen D4 check.
Check.
Okay, so you're threatening Queen D2 check and Queen F2 mate. So this is
check.
mate.
Check.
Or mate. Oh, sorry, not there. Sorry, not there. I mean here.
Check.
Here. And then this is mate.
Checkmate.
Sorry. Forgot bishop's in backward. But I know there's a mate. So yeah, you can't do that. So you gotta play bishop D3.
Check.
And now the sneaky move here, is the pendulum swing. The pendulum swing. Bishop F5 back to D7. And there's actually no way to stop bishop A4. There's no good way to stop bishop A4. So actually the best move here is to play rook C4, believe it or not. Then DC4, Queen C4, E6. And this is just bad for black. Or sorry, bad for white. Because he's losing a pawn and his king sucks and rook F2 is coming and it's just bad. Yeah, like king C2, bishop C6, and black's better. So this doesn't work. So two moves that do work are rook C2 immediately. Okay, stopping mate. So bishop F5. Okay, the rook really has no place great to go, because if it goes here, still just going to play bishop D3. And even queen A2, queen B1 is an idea. So queen B3, because again, you're up a full rook here, so you can afford to give up some material. Bishop C2,
check.
Queen C2. King C2 is a little too dangerous. Rook C8 check is coming, and queen D2 is mate. So that's not good. So you got to take with the queen to stop mate. Queen A2. B3, Queen A1, Queen C1, Queen A2, Queen C2, Queen A1,
check.
Queen C1, draw. No real way for either side to improve upon that. So that's one way to draw. The other way is after E3, you can play the move, instead of Rook C2, you can play Queen takes D5 actually, which is what GPAC's idea was.
Check.
And then this is a draw, not so much because it's perpetual, but just because it's completely equal. After Queen D5, Bishop C4, okay, winning the queen back. Rook F5, Bishop D5,
check.
I mean, what else? Rook D5, so now I'm threatening all sorts of discoveries. King E1, defending this pawn. Bishop B2, Rook C2, EF2, check. Bishop F2, Bishop A4, so threatening Rook D1, Rook H1. So Rook C8 check.
Check. King
G7. And again, this is equal. Because black has a pawn for the exchange, but this pawn's weak. This rook is dead. If white could castle, it'd be great, but unfortunately white moves his king a bunch, so it's not letting me castle, because it's illegal. Can't castle, can't castle. So yeah, this rook being dead means that black has tons of compensation with two awesome bishops and the pawn for the exchange. Black can't really hope for more than a draw here because I mean he has such limited material. But yeah, I mean this position is probably equal. So yeah, if black finds E3, it's just a draw, either by perpetual or just because of equality. Bishop e1 instead of rook c2 at what position? Not sure the bishop could ever come to e1. Because there's always a pawn there. Oh, you mean here? Oh, bishop e1 here? That's probably what you meant. Yeah, that's probably what you meant. Okay, so yeah, if e3 take and bishop e1, the problem with this is that I can play queen a4 check.
Check.
And then you have to block somehow. And then I play check.
Check.
You have to block somehow, and then I check.
Check.
You have to take, and then I take.
Check.
Then you take. And then I play check.
Check.
And you play here. Then I play check.
Check.
And then you play here. And then I play take. And I'm winning. Because I have a queen and a rook, and I have two extra pawns. So yeah, the problem with bishop e1 is that my queen gets super active. You're taking away a flight square from your own king. And so your king actually ends up being trapped. So that's the problem. Hope that answered your question. And yeah, queen takes d5, I showed you it works, but it only leads to a draw. Okay, but unfortunately for Shang Leilu, he did not play e3. He instead played queen a4 check.
Check.
And now white's again completely winning. Let me flip the board again. So white did play the correct move here, which was b3. Rook c2 also is fine, but b3 is most accurate. And then bishop g4 check was played.
Check.
Okay, now only one move here. Well, only one good move here. So what should white play here? There's one bit of trickiness left. One bit of trickiness left. Yeah, so f3, ef3, and now what? The point is, if you take my queen, I'm going to take your pawn check and then take your rook and get a new queen. And all of a sudden, I'll be winning. So how do you stop that? Yeah, very good. So queen takes e5 is check,
Check.
e6, and now what after e6? So I'm attacking your queen. And if you take my queen, I'm still gonna play fg2. Yeah, very good. So we do a little fancy queen check. Queen takes e6,
Check.
deflecting the bishop. So bishop takes e6, and then b takes a4. Yeah. And of course, if the king
Check.
moves, then we can actually just take on g4. And then we're just up a rook and a bishop in this position, which is pretty good. So this is what happened in the game, actually. So he played f3, took,
Check.
took,
Check.
took, and took. And now you're just up a full rook. So one final trick that black tried was bishop d5, so threatening this move. And now what's the simplest way to win here? What's the simplest way to win here? Well, g4, f2. g4, f2. And bishop c4, take, and fg2. No. Yeah, g4, f2. And bishop c4 is even worse. Take, and fg2. All of a sudden you're losing now. All of a sudden you're losing now. All of a sudden black wins. So no. No. Don't fall for last minute tricks. Yeah, and g3 f2. And I win your rook. That's bad. That's very bad. Yeah, king e1's illegal. Yeah, if you play king e1 first, I just take on g2 and you lose your rook again. Take, 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 and now your rook's trapped. And again, I'm winning. So where's the best move? It's tricky. It's a little two-move tactic. So the best move is actually just to take. Best move is to take. So take,
Check.
king d2, take, and then of course the final bishop c4 check.
Check.
And we win the rook bishop. So king moves somewhere, doesn't really matter, and rook h1. And we're just up a full piece. And that's resignable. So yeah, the best move is actually just to take on f3. But yeah, after bishop c4, f2, no, it doesn't work, right? G whatever, f2, bishop c4, I just take, and then I make a queen.
Check.
And again, this is just equal. Take, take,
Check.
king e2, rook f2,
Check.
king e1, bishop e6. It's just equal. So yeah, the right way to do it again is to take on f3. So it looks weird that you're allowing this fork,
Check.
but you have this bishop c4 at the end. So king d2, black moves. I mean, what else is he gonna do? He has to take, because I mean bishop c4 is coming anyway. So you know, I mean the rook is trapped at the moment, but bishop c4 is coming anyway. So you know, if black goes, I don't know, a5 or something, I'm still gonna play bishop c4 check.
Check.
And then I can actually get my rook out if I want. So he has nothing better to do to take the rook and then check.
Check.
And then just take. So after king d2, black resigned.